What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Alexandra Holzer, who is a paranormal investigator. Now, her father is the original ghost hunter, published author Professor Hans Holzer, a Ph.D. with over 143 plus titles in the genres of parapsychology, the supernatural, religion, healing, and most famous for the Amityville Horror. Now, while raising 4 children, Alexandra wrote children's short stories, poetry, science fiction fantasy novels, screenplays, and supernatural horror thrillers. And she joins me today to discuss her work as a paranormal investigator and much more. Alexandra Holzer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is fantastic to have you on. Now, I think, rather than me ask you, tell me a bit about yourself, I think to begin with, tell me a bit about your father.
Okay, my father was, as I say, the late and great original ghost hunter and professor, Dr. Hans Holzer. He was from Vienna, Austria, and he came to the States as a little boy. He was a little bit older than that, but after coming here, he became a journalist, a skeptic journalist. In his teens, he was not really interested in businesses per se. His father ran a tailor suit shop in Manhattan. So he kind of went out on a quest for the unknown from a very young age. And he evolved into writing for Fate magazine. He met the famed Irish medium Eileen Garrett, who coerced him into taking his investigations and research, which at that time, as a parapsychologist, you did, but you didn't, you had your own work. Where'd you put it? So Ghost Hunter was born in 1963. And it just kind of propelled from there as he became known as the ghost hunter. And so I'm his daughter continuing that legacy, and he basically came up with the Holzer Method, which really is just combining metaphysics with science, accepting all forms of potential evidence, fact, and data, or left as an unknown, into your cases, if you will. And he traveled globally and worked on In Search of with Leonard Nimoy, did the Amityville Horror case as well with medium Ethel Johnson Mayers. So he was the go-to guy. He was the ghost man. From Austria into Manhattan, he became the ghost man.
Absolutely, he was a pioneer in his field. And for yourself, growing up in that environment, did you ever think that you'd follow his footsteps in a sense and become a sort of second-generation ghost hunter?
Oh my God, no. That was the furthest thing from my mind. If anything, I wanted to be an actress. I always was writing, you know. I was kind of my head in the clouds, you know. But he created that environment at home, because we had actors come over, we had singers, we had all sorts of different personalities. So I kind of fed off of that. And so it wasn't until probably my late 20s that I was like, I went to art school, I went to FIT in Manhattan, and I wasn't fulfilled. And then I reached 28, 29, and then things started to change. And then when I lost my aunt, my mother's sister on the Buxhoevenen side, everything just flipped. I started to become aware. I heard her as she had passed. And I said, what's going on? What, is this real? Because I know I grew up in that environment. But as a child, we tend to look at things differently, different perspective. There's an innocence. As an adult, we kind of were in denial of the unknown, if you will. So that propelled me further into questioning, asking, what is this? Why is this? Why are we here? Why are there gravestones? Where does the body go? What does that mean? So, no, I didn't want, and to this day, it's not that it's a curse, but it you know, because I know it's so popular in the TV shows and films, and you know, but it really is very difficult, because when you're the child of such a pioneer, you know, and you have the forefathers before him and the families, I'm the only one I feel that's coming out and continuing that legacy as a family member. It's very isolating, you see. So I love it because it's in my blood, but it's a very odd kind of thing to do.
Yes, because have you been the only you know, your sisters, do you have a sister and brother, is that right?
I have an older sibling, correct, and she's in sales, so she went into the opposite direction. And in fact, she would throw me into the hallway at night saying, Alex, go see what that noise is, I don't want to go. And she's 8 years older than I am, right? So I'm just like, that's great. So here's a little kid with the flashlight, you know. Yeah, she's has no part of it, she respects it, but I give her readings, put it to you that way, you know? It's like I'm there to help her. She just doesn't want to know the other stuff.
Did you, okay, so you obviously you've got, you're intuitive in a sense,
Yes.
and that blossomed later on. We'll get
Yes.
into that a bit more as well, into the readings that you do, because that's a very interesting point, actually. With your father then, what was he looking for in a sense, if you could sort of sum it up?
He was looking for ways to explain to the general public that we are not alone. And there is many facets to how we're not alone. And so it wasn't a question that he needed to know more or believe more. It was a question of, when we find out more information through working with different mediums, clairvoyance and so forth, different forms of science, who came before him, he really wanted to push that edge, saying, well, wait a minute. And he was really trying to combine what was already there before him and saying, why can't we all work together to find out what happens when we die, when we cross over? And what does that mean? And we become beings of light. And what does that mean? So those terms he started creating. And, you know, he was really not so much in search of all the answers, because he knew you're not going to get them all. He was a realist, you see. And so it was more about explaining to the general public in a time where it was like, if you said ghost, it was taboo. That it's okay, that we're here for a purpose. How you live can dictate where you go when you die, that we're not alone, that there's other species, other planets thriving, that we haven't been alone. And so it's a whole mankind quest, if you will. And he went into so many different directions, between the, you know, humanoids and men in black, you know, to the occult with witchcraft. He was also a warlock himself, which is a little bit creepy. We'll get into that later. But, you know, basically it was just, he was in search of explaining to everybody, hey, this is really what this is, you know, and let me show you how. And it was very scientific for him. It was crucial for him to prove. and to have no fear at the same time.
Absolutely. And am I right in saying that he did plus 163 books, or is it less than that, or more?
Yeah, he wrote 145. The Ghost Hunter went into 11 printings, and this is back in the 60s, and so it just kept going. So that was like the first pinnacle. That was like the Bible, really, for the paranormal. And then he's written, my gosh, like, I don't know, 40, 50 screenplays, teleplays. He wrote a little bit for In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. Murder in Amityville became Amityville to the Possession, the film. So he dabbled in a little bit of everything, including musicals, which we're still working on. He has an off-Broadway play called Lysistrata, which is a Greek sex comedy, which he was bringing back. So we're still working on that as well. So he was a creative. So it's really bizarre when you look at what we see today, what we know from the past. You've got Dr. Hans Holzer in the middle, who's doing this amazing research, trying to follow his predecessors, but yet he's doing musicals. So it's really funny.
Well, why not?
It's a body of work that when you look at him, people want to say, no, he's just the ghost hunter. People want to say, oh, he just did this. It's like, no. He covered a gamut of, listen, when you're writing a book, even if it's based on truth, facts, in the paranormal, as a creative, you have to be a good writer. So at some point, you have to realize that's all part of it.
Okay, and I guess that your father then employed the use of mediums, as you've said, in his investigations. And just before we move on to one of the bigger investigations that he covered, that was sort of pinnacle for him. Well, there's many, I'm sure there was, but there's the Amityville. But what did your father think of mediums then?
He was curious about them, which is very respectful and interesting, because today I think there's so much, and not just today, I think it's been over a course of years. There's a certain expectation on what a medium should be and what is a medium versus a psychic, labeling in society as we do, and especially here in the States. And so he never was like that. He approached the form of using oneself as a tool to give data, to find out information from the one that's trying to speak from the other side, or the troubled soul, or in quest, that's not quite crossed over. It was more of another tool for him. So he was fascinated more than anything else. He didn't poo-poo it. It was just kind of like, well, you have these gifts. Let me see more. And he tested them with Zener cards. He did, he always said 50% of a psychic is going to be accurate. The other 50% is up in the air. He says nobody's going to be 100% accurate. So that's kind of how he went about it. He was more enthralled with the ability that they had that he at that time didn't have, or wasn't awakened to.
And keeping on that line of psychics as well, because there's many ways we could take this right now. But when I hear people going for a psychic reading, it's always tell me about my love life, or am I going to get that job?
Am I going to get married?
Yeah, when am I going to get married? Or is my uncle okay? Which is fair enough. A bit of just to find out if there's been a bit of continuation. But why do people not ask those deeper questions about trying to bring through knowledge that could help us in the way the world is right now, in the way that we could better ourselves individually with bringing information across? Because what I'm getting to is this whole genre of paranormal investigation, which we'll touch on with yourself, what you've been up to as well. Really has got to look more towards the angle that there's UV, the UV lights on, and there's things moving in the room. But what does it really mean? What's the bigger picture for life?
Well, that's it right there, isn't it? What is the bigger picture for life? I mean, what is it that we're seeking? Why do we waste so much time and energy and useless questions to lead to information that's really not going to help us further along in our own lives? A lot of us, it's vanity. It's this obsession to want to know what we're not supposed to know. I mean, if we're going to reconnect to family members to make sure that they're okay, are we okay? Are there any messages? It used to be back in the day when we could talk to the dead and help the client, that we're getting messages of hope, help, faith, healing, or warnings. Today, it's more vanity, I feel, and I think a lot of it is a pop culture upsurge of a change with the generations of more about me. Am I going to make more money? Am I going to get this job? It's very obsessive compulsive nature, and I think it's just a different time. But there's still a lot of people out there that want to reach towards the spirituality. If we're going to be able to connect to our loved ones or anybody on the other side that wants to come through, we have our spirit guides, angels if we believe, and so forth. Then we need to be humble and have humility and kind of shed that skin of, I need to know this, and that, and say, I need to evolve first, because maybe I can tap into my own awareness, manifest what I desire, and get the answers on my own with my guides guiding me. I don't know. I mean, it's like...
Absolutely, I would completely agree with you, and especially like you just said, I can manifest what I desire. I mean, that is, when you look at some of, channeled information that came through from people like Seth, when they say that you create your own, Seth speaks, you create your own reality. When you look at a lot of these spiritual gurus on that talk about abundance, they're all saying if you apply the principle that if you ask the universe, it will deliver, in a sense. That's right. There's a bigger picture to this whole end game, in a sense. And I suppose paranormal investigation is that spark for some people, even though it may be on TV and it's all, a lot of it's not quite, 100%. But I suppose it is a lead-in for some people to have a bit of an awakened experience, maybe at the time that they need it.
Yeah.
Potentially.
It is. I mean, listen, any, as we say, in entertainment industries, like, any PR is great PR. And I kind of look at the TV shows as it's PR towards the subject matter. However, unfortunately, 75 to 80% theoretically, and what I've seen is really just entertainment purposes. But if you get that 20% or so that are going to go pick up a Hans Holzer book, or, learn about Price or Carrington or Fodder, it's, or what's ESP, what's telekinesis, I feel that we're still winning the war on trying to educate people that we're not alone, we're not just it, we just don't die and that's it, and so it's still it's a plus, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So just going back to the mediums as well that we were just discussing. Now, obviously, the famous case that I came up with your father was the Amityville.
Yes.
Just tell the audience about that case, just in case they don't know too much about it.
Sure. Well, here in Long Island, New York, there's a town called Amityville, and a lot of the towns out in Long Island are obviously named after Indian names. A lot of history there, of course. And quaint little boating town, very beautiful. And so the story behind Amityville that my father got involved with, I had asked him this question too as a kid. And I said, as an adult, then it kind of clicked with me, the answer, and it was, how did you find out about Amityville, Daddy? Because then as an adult, I said, oh my God, your book made into a film. What is, He says, oh, I read it in the New York Times, like everybody else. They call me up. They says, we need the ghost man come. I go, I'm like, okay, great. So he goes out there. He chooses Ethel Johnson Mayers, who was not a very well-known medium, but she was an older, seasoned woman that was so open and so in control. And back then we called it transmedium. So we did transmediumship. And basically she allowed herself to be a vessel to communicate through whoever was there. So in this quaint town of Amityville, there's this house on Ocean Avenue. Now, what a lot of people didn't realize, because of my father's research that he brought out, was the house was not originally there. It was a house that was moved a long time ago to that plot. They still move houses. It wasn't the house itself. And he never said it was haunted. Unfortunately, we can have a plot of land that's bad. We can have a lot of things that happen. We build over it, and it manifests what was there before. So he went in on that case because there was a heinous murder. The son murdered the whole family. He said he was possessed by the devil. And when my father went to prison to see Ronald DeFeo, which was the murderer, which anybody can look up and Google Ronald DeFeo and they'll see. My father was one of the first ones to get in. And now remember, he's a parapsychologist, so it's a little bit bizarre. He's not a psychologist or therapist. They let the parapsychologist in. And at that time, you can't film anything, so everything was on your little tapes, your cassette tapes. Remember those? And he recorded the interview at both prisons. And he believed he was possessed. So then they took that plea to court. And in New York was the first time that they ever had a court come in and have this case saying, guilty on possession. So he was part of all of that. And, Ethel had picked up this chief Indian spirit that was angry because a little boy had found the skull and started kicking it around like a football, and it angered the spirit, and it kind of reopened up all that energy of desecration, disrespect, the whole thing. So there's a lot there, and basically he felt that there was possession, and that's kind of the whole case for him on Amityville. Was it was a possessive case. You're dealing with Ronald DeFeo, who did drugs, who was bipolar potentially, so that's a great mix for potentially, if we believe, somebody taking over and having us do these things.
Yes, absolutely, and it was like I said, one of the main. Well, that this took him onto a new journey when he did this investigation. It really did.
And he didn't like it. He really didn't like dealing with dark, evil forces. He knows they existed. He's not, he's a very highly educated man. He didn't need to be shown that part. He felt that it wasn't his place to go and be a demon hunter, if you will, or, but he had come across a lot of different cases that dealt with possession. Unfortunately, Amityville was highlighted because it was a public travesty in a town that this never happened in. But that happens anywhere.
Of course. And when we get into the demon side as well, how do you see his work in that? And how did he see it, in the sense that was there such thing as evil, or was it just a spirit that had lost its way, in a sense?
It could be both or neither. A lot of times with somebody who's claiming that somebody took over their body, who has a past history of being a little bit off, my father would take it into, there's a lot of psychology going on, there's a lot of mental illness, but he believed in this case there was possession, that this man could not have possibly been aware of his actions. And there's other cases where he felt that, and I also agree, that there are people that are so convinced of an evil within them or an environment that they can recreate it. So that's that manifestation within itself, physically and then visually. We see those videos on YouTube in Brazil and Mexico, and they're having these exorcisms and their bodies are shaking on the floor. I mean, it's very disturbing, regardless if it was real or not. It's disturbing. So it was dependent on the environment, and you don't know 100%. At the end of the day, in a case like that, how do you really know if it was the manifestation of that person, or if something really did enter their body to take over? I can't remember the name of it, but we had just watched a film last night about a New York cop based on a true story in the city, where he encountered for the first time possessed people that were trying to create a ring to kill other people and sacrifice children. And this New York cop saw things that he never thought he could. He was a good Catholic, the whole thing. And that's based on true events. So, I have to question when you hear stories like that, just like if you see ships in the sky and you're sky watching. I believe.
Yeah, well, like you've just said there as well, if you're going to manifest it, then, thoughts are creative, aren't they, in a sense? So yes. Be careful what we think, and if we are
we're very powerful. We're more powerful than we're aware of, and we're not even utilizing our full brain power. And the fact that there's levitation, there's the fact that we can sit there and get so angry if we have that ability and push the pen off the table. There's so much. I mean, the research, I feel, today needs to go more into like ESP, telekinesis, meditation, really opening up our own selves as that tool and get past the psyche of it and really go and work further with that versus your little EMF detectors.
Yes, absolutely. And just going back to your mediumship skills as well, when you're doing an investigation, can you sense an attachment to a house or a spirit that's sort of left over in a house?
Sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. And I'm with people that pick up right away. They're empaths or really good mediums that they just know stuff, And other times I'm completely closed off to it. I'm so disconnected because I feel like the more I evolve into my research and with what we're doing, it almost becomes clear to me that perhaps my role in all of this needs to change in each environment. So if we all have the ability to be aware and have our sixth sense, which is of course not just a film, which was a great film by the way, we have to evolve. And so I actually investigate per location, per environment, per case, per people or persons, and either I'm very scientific in one or more intuitive in another.
Did your father ever get to meet the Warrens?
There's this running joke with that. So John Zaffis is their nephew, and John and I we go back a bit, and we've filmed ourselves for TV. We pitched TV shows together and stuff like that. I mean, and it's funny because the first time I met him, we were at a conference, and we're sitting at a table, and he's older than I am, obviously, and of course he's going to yell at me for this. But I make fun of him, and he's got no hair, so it's a great joke. And he calls me Witchy Poo, so I'm a witch. He's bald, and I'm a witch. It's great. We're a great couple. So his whole family legacy, my whole family legacy, and they're very different because my father, and I'm not putting anything that he just his body of work and the time that he came around and kept going was a lot larger and different. But with them, there were still many people around investigating during that time. We had the spiritual movement and the whole thing. So, but the fact that we were coupled together, and so we sat at this table in Philly at a conference, and I'm like, who is this guy, And he's like, oh, our families hated each other. He says, really? Do tell. What's the 401 on this one? And he's like, oh my God. He's like, but I love you, so I love you too. So here's a Warren relative with the Holzer daughter, and we were just, and we've done these things before. And we filmed together, and it's weird. It's really weird but it's not, and I'll tell you why. Their style of investigation, first of all, they were more of demon hunters. They were more about possession and the darker side of that paranormal world. My father delved a little bit into it, but his main research was more about explaining what happens when we die, creating methods, creating protocols, being scientific and smart. He had his degree. He went to school. He taught. With the Warrens, it's a little different. They just had cases, which he had too, but they didn't write many books on it. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of, I think today they're known because a film came out. And I'm in the process of trying to get that going too with somebody out in LA. So it's a matter of different people coming out at different times doing different things. And that's really what it comes out to. Because a lot of people were investigating back in the 50s and 60s, but they weren't noted because they did it for different reasons. You really have to be so passionate, die hard, and you have to be educated to go out and be a field researcher like that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, good luck with the LA connection and getting some of your dad's
material. It's with a great guy who's done a lot of well-known films, and I'm like, okay, this is the best contract I've signed yet because I've been in this for like 9 years now, and I'm like, oh my God, now it's like old hat for me, but you can feel it, it's coming, and it's his time. It's his time for he's got The Devil in Texas is a great case. If you want to talk about demonic stuff that he covered, nobody knows about that one really. Because the film wasn't made, so it's silly.
The Devil in Texas. Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you a link to that one.
Okay, please do, and that's potentially what the movie will be based around.
Probably, I've suggested it. There's a lot. I mean, of course, they're going to probably make a play off of Amityville a bit because it's there. He was part of. Yeah, he was part of it. So
there's money to go off. Well, this is fascinating. Oh, okay. Well, Michael Newton once took a patient in a Life Between Life session, and they talked about their past life, one of their past lives, just as a ghost. They just hung around. So, I guess my question is, in a sense, your understanding of ghosts, and what that is, and what your father thought as well, and if it ties in your works.
It does. The part about what a ghost is, and in a lot of interviews that I've been doing over the years, and what he's written, basically, who we are when we're born into this world, we're here, we're alive. Now, when we die and we can't cross over, and what does that mean? Meaning we can't find the light, we can't pull ourselves out of our body, out of the environment that we've died in, and leave that environment. We can come back if we choose as a free spirit. Now, if we're trapped as a ghost, that means literally we haven't detached quite from the environment that we really shouldn't be in. So we create these impressions and or grade A hauntings because we're confused. Some are intelligent hauntings where they're aware and they don't want to leave. There's so many different degrees. It's almost like having 5 different friends with 5 different personalities. And so each one is going to handle a situation differently, but it's the same situation that's being presented to them. It's the same thing when dying. We're presented with death. How that death comes will dictate how we go and if we choose to go and how we're going to go. So there's a hierarchy there of a political system at play as well when we die. So death is actually pretty complicated because you don't know quite where you're going to land,
Yes, absolutely. And would you say then that orbs are ghosts or are connected with ghosts? How? Because you see the orbs sometimes on film, and then you'll see the activity that takes place after the orbs have hung around and whatever they may be up to.
Well, it kind of goes back to ectoplasm and fog and streams and beams of white that comes across the old photos back in, the day, which of course I have all those too, but you'll see, a lot on Facebook, you'll see a lot of older photos posted from the 70s or 80s where you'll have these beams of white that's coming down, and you've got the same photos, like 3 or 4 frames of the kid watching TV, and in this one frame there's this light and there's no other sources, and then you see shapes, anomalies, you see a figure starting to form, legs, an arm, a chicken, a wig, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it starts to, and that is what that is. So orbs are basically manifestations of an energy that's starting to form. And there's a lot of people that say they see faces in orbs. They can see things inside an orb. There's this huge debate against that, and I think, to me, it's spirit energy. However you can show up, you're going to show up. If you don't have enough energy to come through, you're going to show just what you can show if we capture you on film or not. It's really kind of comes down to, it's just spirit energy. It's what we become. We lose our physical, and I think it's a really hard thing for a lot of people to understand, is what do we become once we lose our physical? Those orbs, those beams of white light or yellow, and the auras come. Don't forget aura. There's blue and there's orange, and the shapes taking form. Some are magnificent, where you can see a soldier standing there in Gettysburg at 2 p.m., broad daylight. That's energy. It's all energy. So how it comes is just in whatever shape, form that it can. And that's my feeling and belief on that. My father felt a lot of it, he's like, well, it's because you have to rule out dust, environment, debris. Is it raining? What are your environments? Wind, time of day? What are you using for equipment to take the photo? All of that's easy to go and prove, So if you have everything in a controlled environment and nothing's contaminated, and yet you've got all this coming through on your film, how do you explain it?
Well, that's the thing, and and they're very easy to pick up, apparently, on infrared camera as well, for some reason,
Yes.
in the infrared spectrum.
Yes.
I've got a friend who, I really wanted to send you this footage. I was going to do it, but I've just had such a busy day, I've not had a chance to. The orbs appeared, they started appearing on the camera, and then there was a flash on the camera, something strange happened, and then the chairs were stacked. And he won't release this footage to anyone because he's too scared that they're going to say that he made it up, and it's been a bit of a scary experience for them.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I actually saw it and I was shocked, right? And you can't take the truth away from the truth that it happened. You can say that it didn't happen, you can say it was this or that, but the truth is it did happen, and this guy's not making it up. So I've had first-hand experience. It's a great experience for me because I got to actually see something that I've always wanted to see for a while. But then I had to say to myself, well, hang on a minute. Why are they there?
Yeah.
What are they trying to say? So why do they come? I was told by a medium recently, a channeler, that they only come because they've got something they're trying to say.
Well, they're not happy. I mean, think about it. If you're going to spend your day stacking chairs like in Poltergeist and making ruckus and being that noisy ghost, it's because you're not satisfied. Something happened in your life. You're there for a reason. You're angry. You're frustrated, just like a person is. A nasty individual in life, never satisfied. And so it becomes like that whole kind of, hey, pay attention to me. But there's other cases where it's malicious, it's intent, it is evil, and so you handle those differently. But in a lot of cases, when they move things around, they, and what if it is somebody related to you that's coming? What if it's an environment where you were meant to be in that home because you had a connection from a past life? And so it's like, there's so many different ways that these things can happen that pull us into those environments.
Past life, a home where you had a past life in it, and
there's a connection to why you're back in that place in that time. So you fast forward to where you're living, so you're in your incarnate, yet you were connected to that area, and that area brought you back, and that's that home that you're living in, and all these things start to occur. It just becomes, and then we think, oh, well, we have, deja vu. And those feelings of, I've been here, but I haven't been here. I know I haven't been here, because you know what you do in your life, where you go and what you do and where you live. So there's a lot of times our past lives, and again, if we believe in reincarnation, that we are pulled back into another life story. And that also involves where you live sometimes.
And in your investigations, have you come across poltergeist activity?
I haven't. I've come across being pushed and felt unwanted. I've been in a lot of prisons, and I started to think at some point when I was filming for Travel Channel and then on our personal investigations, there's always a prison. And I said, listen, I'm being sent back to jail a lot. What did I do in my past life? Was I that bad? I don't know. And I'm like, karma? I don't know. I'm trying to be good in this one. But no, I haven't encountered it physically or personally. I've felt things that were negative, but I push on and I push forward. I don't let anything intimidate me. I cannot have any fear, although I might be like this, but I'm inside, I'm like, but I want to know more. I want to follow that down the hallway. You see what I'm saying? But no, I've watched intently the videos. I think YouTube is like the most craziest invention. There's this one guy in Australia called NQ Ghost Hunter or something, and his stuff. Have you seen his stuff at all? It's insanity. Like every day there's something happening, and his TVs are moving and falling. And he was like, "I just bought that TV. It was $2,500." And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's broken in front of our eyes." There's no strings, and he's really smart. She shows you the camera angles. There's nothing that would jimmy this flat screen. The toilet lids, the shower going off and on. And you can feel the anger in these videos. So it's like somebody keeps doing this and pushing that and breaking that. That's scary.
Oh yeah, I mean it's it does get to a point where it doesn't make a nice environment, and like you say, you can tell when you go in an environment what the energy is as well. Yeah, and if we think we've got a house that has got a certain energy about it, is there anything we can do to sort of cleanse it in a sense?
Always. I mean, listen, a lot of misconceptions are that you go in once and you do a cleansing, and you can put sage, you can do all the herbs and white candles and all that fun stuff and say the prayers and read from the Bible. But sometimes you have to go back more than once because there might be one and then more entity in the environment that's kind of creating a bigger energy ball. You don't know who you're fighting. That's why I always say you want to have some form of mediumship involved that they can go and give information to you to help the cleansing as well, because they want to be heard first. And it's almost like my father would bargain. Like in his books, he would do a lot with the mediums. He would do transcripts. So if you pick up one of his books, in the older ones, you'll see transcripts between Hans Holzer, and then the medium of choice at that time for that case. And it's fascinating because there has to be a dialogue first before you're cleansing the home to try to reach an understanding and saying, listen, I'm aware that you're here, but it's time to go. And it's almost like you're talking to a child. My father would deal with these entities like they were children, and he would command them to respect him. And when they would push something off in front of him, my mother and my father would investigate together, and the stories were incredible. They were out in Ireland, and things would be flying around, and my father would say, enough. Answer the question. Just like that. Nowadays it's like everybody, it's like you can't even, there's no comparison to that kind of, but he commanded the respect in that room, and they had to go. But sometimes you have to go back more than once.
That's incredible. That is that he had that kind of stance.
He was crazy. I'm telling you, he was a crazy Austrian. He said there is nothing to fear. What you don't understand and what you don't know means that you have to go and figure that out. But that's not fear. Everything's fear-based because you don't understand. We don't understand. So then why don't we learn to understand? You don't have to be in that environment and like it. You can leave. Somebody else will come in and handle it. But the point is, it's existing. It's real. Things are happening.
Yes. And have you had communication with your father then?
Oh, yeah. This when he passed, now understand, he passed in 2009. I didn't create The Hunt with Holzer. I had a couple of books out. I was doing a lot of radio. As far as entertainment industry, it's like, I liked film, but I never filmed anything. I was really a very, different person at that point. And so when he had passed, about 3 days after, I had a dream of him. And he came to me and he showed me his feet and these nice shiny shoes. And then he left. And I said, well, I know that was Daddy, because you just know. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he showed me his feet because he was a huge ballroom dancer. Loved the big jazz bands and stuff. So in Manhattan, they used to have the clubs. And he met my mother at the Kit Kat Club in the 60s. So, it was his thing. And he could never walk at the end of his life. So he's showing me, like, look, here are my shoes. I'm going dancing. So I knew he was okay. He crossed. Everything was good. That was the first start of it, after which he is around us when we investigate. At home, we communicate with him. In dreams, he'll come. And we don't do it often. It's when you feel like it's that right moment. He's come to me. He's shown me places where I know we're talking in the apartment where we grew up. I know it's my living room, but everything else around it is blurred. And he and I are having conversations about how he failed as a father, where I was supposed to go with the work as a woman in this field where it is very male dominated. It's now being put on me as a woman to lead this. I'm like, they don't want me. It's like, what am I supposed to do? So we're working on that still. We're going through that process, but he comes through, and we've got him recorded. And that was the other thing. I did a spirit box session. We have MP3s on him, and he was announced. He came through. I wouldn't have believed it had I not been involved with it.
No, and it's so true what you said there as well, in the sense that it is a very male-dominated field, isn't it? The paranormal.
Unfortunately, I've been trying to. I've filmed a few reels with some very decent producers. We've been in front of all the networks in the States, and they all love me. It's great. I know what to do. I'm like, ooh, But at the same time, it's like, but here's the legacy. Where are you going to get that? And then it's a woman that can basically change the dynamics a bit, not to be gender specific, but hey, we're in this field. Everybody's labeling everybody. What kind of psychic are you? What kind of medium? So basically, there is an imbalance in the field with women versus men. And again, not to be gender specific and be one of those, but the reality is, look what we have. We turn on the TV, we've got the tube on, and it's mostly men running around with maybe one woman that has to look a certain way to be part of the team and go do what they do. In films, usually, I always think that the women fall down and get killed first with the men, but I could be wrong. But it just seems to me that there's this whole thing about, why can't we have a female lead a reality show? I get the entertainment part of it. I get it gets edited, but when you have somebody that's unique and that's putting it out there, what's the problem? It just is. There's I think there's cookie cutter formats in the industry for TV. And so they keep thinking, let's just get a bunch of men on, a bunch of men on, a bunch of men on. We'll just regurgitate. And what is it doing for the field? Not much. You're just looking for a bunch of new starlets, to put on TV, and then they get a fan base, and then off they go. And it's like, it really has no relevance to the field itself, just because they had an interest in it or they created a group.
Yeah, and the worst thing is as well, when you get these people on who, have they think they've got the best intentions for the field, and yet then they're so closed off to other people's opinions. They know best, and they've had all these experiences, and they just lose their way with being open to newer ideas and stuff, and then you've got
nothing new. But that's the thing. I was talking to my partner about that, and we were like saying, where's the PSI in this? Where's the ESP research? Why aren't we utilizing more of ourselves in these environments? I mean, we should have a good medium on tow. We should have a psychologist. We should have a parapsychologist. We should have somebody that's exercised the ability to expand their minds, to do ESP and show that to us. We should have it. That's a team for us. You want to stick somebody like me in the middle to be like, ooh, but I also come from that lineage. My whole thing is, I do comic relief. I can't help it. It's the way it is. You got to laugh when you're growing up with the father that chased ghosts for a living. What am I going to do? I got nothing to work with. So I got humor.
Yeah, well, but being spiritual is not being devoid of having a laugh and having a joke. I mean, that's the problem sometimes. It's saying we lose who we are. We have no idea what it means to. I mean, being spiritual is something different for everyone, but it's not the absence of anything.
No, you can't. I agree with you. I think, and the same thing with religion. And of course, my father always said, you don't mix religion with the paranormal, and I agree, because you're going off on different tangents and stuff like that. But when you're on a case and we're walking through like an asylum or something, you've got a group with you and we're touring people or whatever, and we're trying to educate, you're going to crack a few jokes along the way. You see like wires hanging, or there's like this chair that somebody was electrocuted in. You might say something like, go sit in the chair. Let's see if it still works. I don't like you, so let's, like stupid stuff. But I mean, you quiet down and then you get back into the moment, because the reality is, when you're trying to capture evidence, even in an asylum with so much horrible craziness that went on with experimentation and death and torture, and their minds going, and misunderstood cases where they weren't crazy. There was no meds out back in the day, so they just put you in a loony bin, as they called it. And a lot of these asylums were, and they harbored that for centuries, no, but decades, yes. So it's not like a castle or anything like that, but it still has that energy. And you could be there for a long time and not get anything, but yet it could be purportedly haunted. What does that mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you go to these locations as well, do you take tape recordings and then play them back? This whole ESP, electronic voice phenomena, in a sense, or is that something that you do?
Yeah, I mean, doing the EVPs and digital photography, it does help with it. And of course, when you do playbacks, the thing is, we don't hear in real time when they're speaking to us. We're not hearing it unless we're clairaudient, and that we have to work on just to hear the voices in our ears and so forth passing through. But you miss everything, and so that's why when we're recording, we say, can you tell me your name? And you wait a few seconds in between each question to give them a chance, and that you can hear it on playback. Again, there's another thing that I have when you're investigating or somebody says there's an environment happening. A lot of it is theory, because why is it that we always say it's a ghost? A lot of people are interested in jinn. That's been around for a while with the Middle East and the whole thing of what is a jinn and the whole story on that. What if it's demonic? Well, what does that mean? What if it's your own manifestation of the environment? Nothing's happening. You're not recording much. You might have heard something, but you're not sure. And you walk out of there because there's a creepy environment. What if we create certain environments where it's a little bit more spookier than it really is, and there really isn't much evidence to go on? What if it's an alien form? What if it's, with the telekinesis and the connections, go into that kind of environment of other species from other planets? They interconnect with our planet, if we believe. A lot of viewers may not, a lot do. We're on the fence with that. But let's just take that theory in a haunted environment. What if it's a different life form that is projecting the same energy that's connecting with us, and all of a sudden it's a ghost, it's haunted? Who says? How do you really know?
Absolutely. That's a really important bit what you've just said there as well, that this could be interdimensional beings coming through, not ghosts in a sense, well, not all of them, yeah. And like you say, interdimensional, well, that could be a whole array of different ideas.
Exactly. There's too many possibilities, which is what the paranormal is. It is the possibility to disprove, prove, or not know, and it becomes the unknown. And there's so much out there, and I think with the shows, what they're doing is they're boxing in everything. Demon, ghost, demon, ghost. You won't see any angel shows. You won't see any uplifting spiritual angel stories, which there are many out there. Or you won't see somebody like me out there who grew up in this environment from my father, creating that scientific view again. It's just bizarre.
Imagine a show where it's channeled information from different haunted locations of beautiful love and light messages.
Could you imagine a love and light show with a little good music, some good, views, great filming? You could really create a documentary style show that makes you feel good at the end, but you cry because you have these inspirational stories of people that are touched by angels. There was this one story I read online years ago about somebody that pulled into a gas station in the middle of nowhere. They ran out of gas. They had no money. They were down on their luck, whole thing. And some man approached them in a raincoat and gave them money so they could go fill up the car. And when they went to go thank the stranger was gone. There was no other car in the station. The station owner didn't know who they were, never heard of anybody in the area, this very quiet, quaint area. How do you explain that? That somebody just appeared in human form to help that person, that soul. That happens too. That would be a great show. There's so many of them.
There you go. That's the one we're going to produce together. I like that one. That's a good one. Forget the networks. Let's launch it on YouTube, I think.
I think we should YouTube it, or Amazon, or Netflix. It's got to be a documentary style, because then it'll really grip the audience.
Absolutely. Well, hey, listen. Everything changes, and one day there will be a different perspective on this. We mentioned before, there's a lot of charlatans out there. I'll say it now. I mean,
always has been, always will be, but it's more intense today because we're media hungry for this stuff. I mean, let's call it what it is. Everybody wants to see the ghost in act. What is they want to see is everything's visual. There's no. It's the microwave generation. Pop it in, done in a minute. Read a book, research, ask questions, constantly ask. Why do you think this is what it is? What else could it be?
Yes, and I think what you've just mentioned there with the other possibilities, not many people are going down that road.
Not on TV land, no. Maybe.
Not that I've come through on interviews, neither.
No, well, you're right too. That's true. You're right.
You know, that's I like that. That's something different, and that's another completely different angle for it. There's a book for you there, I think. Just in those ideas, it's incredible. With your father then as well. I know we're sort of bouncing back here between you and him. What's some of the sort of more spookier stuff that got me in a sense was the witches. Not that I find that scary, because I think that it's only with only good intent, but just the whole idea behind it, and that there are those cults out there.
Witches. All right. Well, from what I've learned from my father, he wrote this big book called Witches, and really there were accounts of stories of going underground in Manhattan to interview white witches, white magic, black magic, Wiccan, Wicca. That's how he became a warlock, because it's a religion. It's another form of practice, and there's the good side and the bad side, like anything, like in politics. Everything's bad in politics, but that example. All right, let's scratch that one. But like in the paranormal, you've got demons and angels. It's like so this whole thing with it's a religion, it's a practice, it's a belief, and there's this whole connotation that there's like this evil, witch that's creating brews and listen. There's sacrifices. Now we go into that. We've got a lot of stories in like New Orleans, down in NOLA, and he actually worked on a case with O'Doon, who in his home found there was a pentagram drawn underneath on the floor, and that he had the whole thing was happening there, and he worked on that case about O'Doon, and it's fascinating. There's again, like in the paranormal with the occult, there's also layers into the occult. So he went underground for the witch book, and he interviewed a lot of different cases of. Some of them wanted to be unidentified, and so he created names for them. But it was really to understand the cult. It was a different thing happening versus people that were out there investigating for ghosts and so forth. It was just so separate.
One thing I wanted to touch on as well, because I know we're getting to the top of the hour here as well. When we talked about hauntings in our homes or whatever the situation may be, I think sometimes it could be true to say that when we feel that we're not being ourselves, that there's things about our behavior that's changed in a sense, we have to be very aware sometimes, I think, that there can be attachment. Spirits can attach themselves to you sometimes, and you can take on some of their personality or energy, and it's not always a good thing. Have you come across that as well in your work?
I think so, and I say that because I think it's more defined in certain situations than others. I think some people who are aware of it more will be aware when they walk into their home that they're not alone, and they were before and now they're not, and where were they coming from? And so you start to piece together a timeline. Personally, for me, growing up in New York with both my parents and my grandmother, and everybody's psychic and ghost hunting and this merger of these two big families and the whole thing, I don't think I could have escaped that. But I felt off of him coming home, and many a nights there were things that were, I think, left behind, that ended up in my room, but not my sister's room. I'd ask her questions. Did you experience this? Did your door not open? Because we have no locks. Were you cold? Because it's like 90 degrees out, the air's on, but it's not that cold. And it was like my breath was no, nothing. So yeah, we have attachments. And I think sometimes we're chosen. What does that mean? Are we vulnerable? Are we so in fear? Are we not risk takers? Are we panicky? Are we down and out in our luck in our lives? Are we so susceptible to be taken over where something's going to attach to us for that energy, for whatever reason? You could have a piece of furniture that you bought, you don't know from where, but it's an exquisite piece from India. You got it for $10 at a flea market. Validation, it's a great piece. You bring it home, all of a sudden the thing starts creaking at night. It's just, there's all attachment.
This is what some of the Warren stuff relates to as well in their investigations.
Oh, yeah. I've had stories from my father who worked with psychics. There's a woman named Carla who actually brought pieces home from their travels, and they made noises probably after the first night they had it. She started hearing things in the apartment. She's a psychic, and there was nothing before there. Her house wasn't haunted. What, because she's a psychic, you think there's a ghost? I don't think so. So here's the furniture's creaking. And in our own house, they used a tripod table for seances, kind of like Dan Aykroyd and Peter Aykroyd, his father. They used to do the same thing, and so we have the like parallel family. The table moved and creaked and flew across the room, and it was like, okay, game over, we're done. We're done with the seance. Furniture is an object. It can't encompass life. However, another life attachment can move it, push it, manipulate it, and if there's something with it from another country and you're bringing it into your home, what's to say it's not going to create that environment? A doll, and if it's not, I mean, and there's been stories like that forever. I mean, it's just a lot of stories on that.
Yeah, dolls. That's right. That can happen. Well,
we have many here, Kevin. I know the creepy zombies. We picked another one up today for Halloween because we're celebrating that next weekend here in New York, and we're just adding to the collection. Right.
America celebrates Halloween. It's a much bigger fest. I mean, we celebrate it in England, but I mean, in America, it's huge.
I think it's an excuse to go party. Do you know what I mean, dude? It's like, let's just go party and look scary and have fun. Or role play. Let's say I want to be, a princess for tonight. You can actually get away with wearing a big floofy gown and off you go. But it's so different today. I think it's about, it's like cosplay. It's almost like there's a business. It's marketing. It's disgusting. I don't know. Christmas trees are out now over here, so I don't know. We're not even at Halloween next week. I got Christmas trees in front of me.
It's crazy, isn't it? We live in a crazy world sometimes. We really do. Okay, now just bringing this interview back to yourself as well. Now you do offer readings. That's a service that you do. How can people get in contact with you for a reading?
They can go to www.alexandraholzer.com, and there is a link on the left that after it welcomes you that you can have an intuitive reading with me. And I help people, whatever, there's a pay thing on there, but whatever they can afford is great. It's time on both ends. It's energy invested. I struggled with that for a long time. I've always been able to help people. And then after I help them, I said, oh my God, I can't believe I knew that. Yeah, I sound like a kid in a candy store. I'm so not pretentious like that. Earning is okay when you're helping people. I don't have a problem with that anymore. I see the goodness in it. It's like, well, I have a right to earn too. If I'm spending time in an office, this is my office, and I'm giving you my time.
Absolutely.
So I'm over that hump now, but I'm not like outrageously like, some of them that can and do because they're more popular. I understand that. I don't think I would ever do that anyway. Because if I was earning enough, why would I go and ask more from you? If I have over here, then if I can help, let me just still help.
I think any genuine person that's really had to, question it, as we all as we do sometimes.
It's personal. It don't hurt people. It's just you're really they're really looking for information, and you may not agree with what they're asking, but that they're there for a reason.
Hey, listen, like you said, it's an exchange of energy, and like you also said, it's you want to be helping people and giving back, and I think that's a lot what your father's work and your work does, in the sense is it's being of service.
And I love that you said that. It's very humbling for me because as much as I love filming, and I know there's a lot of that Hollywood stuff, there's a lot of self-fulfilling because it's like, but there's gifts. You give back, pay it forward, use those tools, build from that, and then help those that are in need. That's how the bigger I get for the Holzer family, the more we can help with passions and causes we believe in, like diseases and cures and animals that need a voice. And teaching you to be a better person. I just don't see why that's such a bad thing.
That's not absolutely. You've got it sus there. You really have. What would you say? Okay. What would you say then? Is an important message of your work in a sense?
My message for my work right now, as it stands, moving forward, and from taking from the past, is to please relearn our history, our forefathers in this field. Understand that for me as a woman who wears many hats in her life, that juggles everything, that it's imperative that I do continue my father's work in his name, but that my own work encompasses more of a lighter side, a comical side, intuitiveness, because that's who I am. It has nothing to do with Hans. And to kind of just move forward with a legacy that inspires other generations, because it's so clouded today with the pop culture and the media, to be grounded by going through the Holzer route and understanding that we're also looking more into telekinesis and PK and ESP and manifestations, shamanism, meditation, and that is part of ghost hunting, and that is part of the paranormal, and it's part of the psychic world. It all rolls into one, and when we get to that point of and stop breaking everything apart, like, oh, well, you're this, we're all one. We can be all of this if we choose.
That is a great message. Exactly. That's the way it should be going with the paranormal investigations, including everything. So thank you so much for that beautiful message.
Thank you.
Well, Alexandra Holzer, I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.